I want to give you an overview of all the gear that I took on this trip. But let me first start by saying that you need a home base when you get here. This room happens to be the Israel Youth Hostel on B'nai Dan Street. Here's the information. The trail is just 200 yards over in a northerly direction. As you can see, the rooms are clean. This is a single room. The neighborhood is quiet. And I can't emphasize that enough because I stayed at other hostels where it was a very noisy neighborhood, and even at the hostel itself, it seemed like sleep was merely an option and not really that important. Whereas here, they really seem to keep a lid on the noise. So, highly recommended. Coming over, somebody recommended that I get a duffel bag to put the pack inside, and I'm really glad I did. I found this one. It's really intended more for suits, but my pack fit well inside, along with an extra pair of shoes, and it just lessens the probability that your checked luggage is going to get lost, or the straps are going to tangle on something and you're going to end up losing things. So I did mention extra shoes. In all fairness, I should say that this pair was what I wore in northern Israel, and they had several hundred miles before I even got over here. And by the time I got to Tel Aviv, I felt like it was time to replace them with a new pair. These happen to be the Merrill Moab ventilators. They seem to be venerable. I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. They aren't that expensive, and I felt like they performed very well. I guess while we're still speaking about shoes, let me mention these gaiters. These seem to get a lot of curiosity from the Israelis. Apparently nobody uses them over here. I'm not sure that I convinced anybody that they were worth investing in, but I personally liked them. These happen to be made by Outdoor Research. The strap that goes under the heel broke in both cases, but not till really just the final week. So the purpose of a gaiter is to keep dirt from getting inside your shoe, and you will go through a lot of sand, a lot of gravel. It ends up keeping your socks cleaner. I think it's a win-win situation. The downside is they're black, so they absorb heat, and it probably does make your feet sweat a little more, and I think that's particularly the eye that Israelis looked at these askance, why they did. Okay, the pack itself, a JanSport external frame. It's their cheapest model. This happens to be called a Scout. I can't say enough good things about it. It's the lightest external frame I could find, under 4 pounds, cheap, under $100. And one of the nice things about an external frame pack, one of many nice things, is organization, pockets. pockets everywhere, pockets. Also, on the back, the way the mesh is arranged, you get a fair amount of breathing space, and the way you use it with the hip belt, you can end up allowing your back to breathe, so that the sweat evaporates. Okay, let's start at the top. This is where I carried the sleeping pad and the tent. And it amazed me that even though this is just thin nylon riding at the top of the pack, hitting overhead branches, lots of thorn branches, but the Thermarest ProLite air mattress never got punctured. So this happens to be their 6-foot length version. I really liked it a lot. It performed well. I oftentimes used it to sleep directly on the floor or concrete or whatever. Works very well. The tent, this is the one made by Gossamer Gear, meaning that it only weighs 1 pound. When you add up the extra pole and the 6 tent pegs that come along with it, which happen to be titanium, it comes closer to 1.5 pounds. It takes 2 poles to hold it up, but I used this the unsung hero of my hike. This is the carbon fiber walking stick that Gossamer Gear also happens to make. Weighs just a little over 4 ounces. Has a camera mount on the top. This is where I mounted the GoPro camera. So you didn't see this very often in any of the shots, but like I say, it served multiple purposes as a tent pole, as a walking stick, and as a camera monopod. And as far as the pole goes, it's got kind of a funky sort of locking mechanism. It's like a rubber roller there, and this little brass ring at the top that it spins down and makes the rubber stopper get fat and essentially locks it in side the tube. The problem is that sometimes you'll find yourself spinning and spinning and spinning and just waiting for it to lock or to unlock, but it never let me down. So highly recommended. And finally, the ground cloth that I also happen to get from Gossamer Gear. Very, very light. So that's what I carried in the on the top of the pack. And let me say this too about the tent. For the most part, you really don't need one. Certainly don't need one in the desert, at least not after March. You know, I for myself, it served more the purpose of keeping bugs away, and I suppose some sort of a mosquito netting, or mosquito netting with some sort of a framework to hold it up off your face would work just as well. The tent also functions as a means of privacy, you know, if you just want to get out of the view of people. The tent, as you've seen in the video, certainly does not work for stopping wind. If anything, it just makes the wind even more annoying. So, you know, in the case of wind, you just really the only thing you can do is just hunker down behind rocks, and you'll find that at a lot of the night camps, people will have already set up rock walls to lay down behind. So that's the tent. The canteen, I like a canteen because I want to get as much weight off my back as possible. So by carrying a 2-liter canteen, that's you know, another 5-6 pounds that I don't have to carry on my back. This is another thing that the Israelis seem to be puzzled by. This is an idea that just doesn't catch on with anybody here or in the United States. I don't know why. Okay, continuing on the pack, a washcloth, which I found to be very essential. This is what I use for a towel. This is actually the sleeve off of some long underwear, but it worked well as a towel. And by putting it on the outside, it means it dries fast and it doesn't fester and smell funky. This little tin cup is what I use to drink out of. It also serves to protect what's inside the little stuff sack here, which is the burner for the gas stove, which you'll see in a little bit, and also tuna fish can that has holes in it. Useful. I was hoping to be able to find denatured alcohol over here and be able to use this as an alcohol stove, but I couldn't find it. Even if I could, it'd probably only be in maybe a hardware store in a big city like Tel Aviv here. I would not be able to find it any other place. So that was simply a backup to the gas stove. This is the aluminum foil that I used as a windscreen around the gas burner, and I think that that's the reason why. I'm going to bring the gas burner out now. It's in the bottom compartment here. The reason why this lasted the entire trip, and it's because when I would fasten the burner on the top and then fire it up. As you see, organization is the key to everything. I can lay my hands on things within seconds. I'm just going to fire the burner up here real quick. Okay. This is the reason why I could make it last. I didn't use it as a blowtorch. If I could hear that sound, I knew I was turning it up too high. I would turn it down to simmer, and that's how I would cook stuff. And with the windscreen around it, it was the most efficient use of the gas. And also, I would never bring things to a rolling boil. I'd bring it right up to the point where there's bubbles on the bottom, and then I would turn it off. And then I would just let the water do its thing, you know, stew for another 5-10 minutes, and then eat whatever it was that I was cooking, or in the case of coffee, just drink the coffee when it's that hot, not boiling hot. So, okay. All right. This, which is what I've already broken into. This is my miscellaneous bag. This is the little sack that I pulled the lighter out of. It's also got my spoon and also got my tiny little knife. Came in very handy. Also has a set of clippers on it because you're going to be over here long enough that you're going to have to worry about trimming your nails, trimming your beard, things like that. This is all the stuff I use for brushing my teeth, including hand cleaner. Very important to wash your hands before you brush your teeth and floss your teeth. On other hikes, that has been the reason why I've gotten sick. This is my first aid kit, which fortunately I never had to use, or hardly had to use. I want to put a plug in for this tenacious tape that's made by McNett. This tape was what kept my shorts from falling apart when they would start to split. I would put the clear version of the tenacious tape on there. This is the same stuff that kept these sunglasses, which had a split in the plastic right there. When I got over here 2 months ago, that sunglass was broken, but I put the tenacious tape on there, and 2 months later, it's still working. So, just very good stuff. You know, as good as duct tape, better than duct tape. This also has the moleskin, which just is essential. Every day I put this stuff on. You know, the other usual stuff, antifungal cream, just in case you get athlete's foot, you know, bandages. Even had some backup iodine tablets just in case I, came across some really funky water. This is pretty disgusting. This is a tincture of iodine. I had read online that when you take a little dab of this and put it on your skin before you put the moleskin on, that it'll cause the moleskin to stick better and to stay fastened to your feet longer. I'm not convinced one way or the other that it really worked, and it started leaking out of the bottle, so I ended up having to put it in a bag. Other than that, just the usual, some alcohol swabs, a mirror, a can opener that did come in handy. One of those, what do they call them, P56 can openers that the Army uses. So that's, and Dr. Bronner's soap, some sort of a liquid soap. This is very important because you're going to be hand washing your clothing on this trip, and this just makes this stuff just a little bit cleaner than plain water. This is new skin. It's kind of like a fingernail polish of sorts, except it's used on skin when skin starts cracking under dry conditions. Very important stuff. And finally, super glue for those all-important repairs. This is food bag. North of Arad, you will not have to ever carry more than 1 day of food because you're basically going from kibbutz to kibbutz or kibbutz to little village. You'll always be able to buy food. When you first come over here, just to kind of soothe your nerves, and it's going to take you a while to get used to all the labels and the different writing. When you go into a grocery store, you're going to be kind of overwhelmed. So, bring a few of your favorite energy bars, maybe a few of your favorite meals to cook, pasta meals or whatever, but don't overdo it because basically, what it's going to boil down to is in the morning, I had coffee and maybe an energy bar. Lunchtime might be crackers, chips of some sort, and that's partly for the carbohydrates, but it's partly also for the salt. you know, you might carry you get into veggies over here, so you might have a tomato and maybe a cucumber in your pack. Tuna fish is going to be very important. Carrying buying a can of tuna for supper, the protein, and make sure it's got the oil in it, not the water version, because you need the calories. And they do have their own version of kind of pasta meals over here. But like I say, you're going to buy little small grocery stores all the time. So you can start out your morning with chocolate milk and ice cream. You can end your day that way. Clothing bag. You don't need a lot. This is a very lightweight fleece jacket that I got from Montbell. This is a wind pants, plastic wind pants. The function of those two pieces of clothing is really more for clothing to wear when you're washing your other stuff. Socks. I brought 3 pairs of socks. I really only used 1, maybe 2 pairs. These are the wool socks made by Darn Tough, Vermont company. I thought they performed very well. Plus, they put a guarantee on their stuff in case they do get a hole in it. A wool cap, because I came over in March, and I used that for the first couple weeks. A towel, absorbent towel that I never did use. I did bring an extra pair of sunglasses because, like I say, I didn't have a lot of confidence in that pair there, but they came through for me. And this was just some sort of a kind of a knee brace that I never used. That and okay, shirt. I loved this shirt, and being long sleeve was part of what made it so attractive because of the sun factor. But it has a way of being able to roll the sleeves up very easy. These pockets here were just so vital, made life so easy, because in this pocket I would carry the maps and the description just for the day, and I would cut them out of the guidebook as I went along. So I didn't have to be pulling that heavy guidebook up. Just had this, pull it out very easy. And this is where I carried my bandana for, all those other purposes. These shorts right here, old, they're very old. I mean, they're like 6 years old. They've got a lot of miles on them. They're not even made anymore by REI. These gave me problems because they were well worn even before I got here, and they started falling apart while I was here. So I had to do some emergency sewing with dental floss. I did buy 2 other new shorts before I left, but it was March that I left. And because it was cold, it was still winter, I wasn't able to test those pairs of shorts out in the field, obviously. So I just didn't have enough confidence in either of them to bring one of them over here. So that's why I went with these. I should mention too that I attach to the tightening strap this little LED light just so I have my flashlight on hand all the time. So that's the clothing. And so when it comes to the wash time, you're washing 3 items: your shirt, your shorts, and your socks. That's it. So it's not even going into a laundry. We're talking about just a bucket of water, a sink, squeezing it out, using a little liquid soap, hanging it to dry, or just putting it back on wet. Bang, you're ready to go again. So final layer here. This is a rain jacket that I used the very first day on the trail and never since then. So it ended up just being a kind of a pillow of sorts that I would put my head on. These were the backup, the rain pants that I ended up cutting the legs off of and using as an emergency pair of shorts, very lightweight. This is something that I never used, carried the whole way, a silk liner for the sleeping bag because it was quite cold, almost freezing when I first got here in March. I was afraid that my sleeping bag wouldn't be warm enough, but the sleeping bag was. Speaking of the sleeping bag, let's go down to the bottom compartment here. This is the titanium pot. Functioned very well. This is the foam box that I carried all my recording, audio recording, battery charging, extra batteries, all the GoPro stuff. And the sleeping bag, it's a Montbell. It's rated at 35 degrees. It was always warm enough. Even in the wind, I felt this even cut the wind. Performed very well. 35-degree bag. Did not need that silk liner. Okay, water bottles on both sides. 1 liter. They're just Gatorade bottles. Nothing more expensive than that. Side pockets. Cell phone. Passport, wallet, pills, charging device for the cell phone, ace bandage that I used a few times. I don't like carrying all this electronic stuff, but it seems to be a necessary evil. If I were to do this trip next time, another time, I would have a smartphone. There's just no two ways about it. Having internet access is key over here. I seem to be the only person in the country that does not have a smartphone. It would just make life so much easier. In this my medication bag, prescription pills, but I did want to put Advil, even Vicodin in case my back got really messed up. Thank God I never had to use that. But I wanted to put a shout out for these psyllium capsules. Can't say enough good stuff. This might have been my secret weapon here. The psyllium keeps you regular. You take 3 or 4 of these a day. You may think that regularity is just something that old people worry about. Trust me, when you come over here, Israel is 7 to 8 hours ahead depending on daylight savings times. So your body's going to be out of sync. Your body's out of sync. Your gut, your GI is going to be out of sync. So you're going to be constipated. You do these psyllium tablets daily, and you'll be regular in no time. Just, I can't say enough about that. The other pocket, toilet paper. You don't need a whole roll. I've seen people on the trail carrying an entire roll. You're in bathrooms all the time, so you just, if you run out, you take some off of their roll. This is the sun, what I use for sun protection. Worked well with my baseball cap, which also I should mention is a Montbell. I like Montbell because they take lightweight very serious, and this was one of the lightest caps I could find. I've worn some caps that were so heavy it presses so hard on your forehead that you end up getting a headache after a while. But this just straps, around the side, and it protects your ears from the ever-present sun. Other than that, just a little more first aid stuff, some sunscreen, some moisturizer, and some kind of heavy-duty moleskin for my own peculiar metatarsal issue. This is a pack cover. Along with my rain jacket, I use this, I think, once. And and then finally, a platypus 3-liter water container. I use this just a handful of times. You know, and here's the deal too. Going back to what I talked about first about base camp. When you get here, you may have some extra stuff, like an extra pair of shoes, the duffel bag that you brought your pack in. You might have some gear, like the rain gear that you don't need or whatever. A hostel like this one will store your stuff if you book in advance. In other words, say I get here to Tel Aviv, I stay here for 3 days, and then I start up north. And so I figure I'm going to be back here in Tel Aviv in, say, 2.5 weeks. So I can book a room in advance. I'll tell them, okay, I'm going to be back here in 2.5 weeks. Here's the money for the room. When you do that, you can store your stuff here, your extra stuff here. This is where I got confused when I first came over, because I was saying, well, I don't know exactly when I'm going to be here. You know, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2.5 weeks, it could be 3 weeks. Well, what they didn't explain to me at the time was I have 72 hours to change my reservation. In other words, I pay for the room in advance. I store my stuff here. Say the time gets away from me. If I give them if I call ahead and say, look, I'm behind. Let's move the room up to 3 days later than what I originally thought. Fine, they'll do that. There's no problem then with continuing to store your stuff here. So it's just that's as good as you're going to get as far as a home away from home. And getting back to some of this other stuff that I was saying, I never really used after I realized that I wasn't going to use. If you were in the States, you'd mail this stuff back home. Here, you don't know what to do, and it's not like you can mail it to this place here, because they aren't going to go that far out on a limb to help you. So I just ended up carrying this stuff for the entire trip, even though I never used it. So it probably ended up being an extra pound or two that I didn't really need, which again, speaking of weight, I want to mention water here too. I only carried a maximum of 4 liters, 2 in the side pockets and the 2 in the canteen. I know that was walking on thin ice, and the last day it proved to almost be my undoing as I got down to my final liter. But I think most people, and the guidebook also recommends carrying 5 or 6. Personally, I don't like water that much. I don't drink it that much. I experimented with different ways to try to make it more appetizing, including tea, including those powdered flavorings. They all helped a little bit, but for the most part, I'm not a big water drinker, and I think that's why the chocolate milk played such an important role in my hike, because it tasted good. It sat well in my stomach, and it's liquid. And so anyways, that's my gear. I think the bottom line is that hiking in Israel is much simpler than it seems at first glance. Hold on just a second. Hello? That was room service. bringing me an extra towel. Like I say, it's a great place. I did want to say this about the guidebook. Oh, the bottom compartment. Your traveling office. That's one of the things that seem to be take some getting used to, is how much paperwork you have to carry on a hike like this. I broke it down to like 3 different Ziploc bags. This was the maps, hand drawn and otherwise, for the desert section. This was the repository for all the maps. Once I was done using them, I put them in here for future reference. After all, it's not a cheap guidebook. This is the Trail Angel list that you can get off of the internet. And there's also a list of what they call low-cost accommodations. So the Trail Angels are free, the low-cost are low-cost. And then this is the guidebook. This happens to be the 2nd edition, and as you can see, it's very thin right now because all the pages have basically been cut out of it. But I did want to say something specifically about the day number 2 of in the guidebook if you're going south to north. Day number 2, which was my next to the last day, was one of the hardest days on the trail, and I was in shape. Yes, I was operating on only 2 or 3 hours of sleep, but nevertheless, it was one long, hard day. It should be broken up into at least 2 days, and I've heard some people say even 3 days. But if you break it up into 2 days, you're only doing like 13 kilometers a day. That's the one major recommendation that I would make as far as the schedule that's in the guidebook. As far as going north to south or south to north, the vast majority of people, 90%, go south to north. You know, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you start in the south, no, I take that back. I like the way I did it, and my reason for doing it from north to south was this. I started in March. It's winter in Pennsylvania. It's cold. For me to step on the plane, fly over here, and in 24 hours be carrying a heavy pack through the desert, physiologically as well as psychologically, that was too abrupt, too extreme. The desert is also, I think, the toughest section of the hike, and you're going to spend 3 weeks, as long as a month, some people, going through the desert. The logistical problems of water there are enormous. All concerns that I just did not want to be overwhelmed with right out of the gate. So by starting in March, you get the cooler temperatures up north, you get the green, you get the flowers. If you go the other direction, you know, you're going to be getting up there in late April or May or even later. The green has gone. The flowers are starting to go. It's starting to look brown. So you're going from brown desert to brown north. So yes, it is chancy going the other direction. You're going to have, you know, rainy and cold in March, but you know, it's always a roll of the dice. I know people who started in the desert and they had to deal with rain and cold too. So, you know, what I would say is, don't book your ticket until the last minute. You know, try to follow the weather trends. You know, yes, you're going to have to book a ticket, you know, maybe 3 weeks minimum or a month before you leave. But, you know, don't lock yourself in 4 months in advance if you find out that, you know, late February, early March, they're having major snowstorms here. It's like, okay, you know, just kind of let the bad weather pass on by and then, you know, buy your ticket. So another comment about the Trail Angel system. It's wonderful, it's unique, it gives you a chance to see Israel really close up, because basically people open their house to you and give you somebody's spare bedroom or maybe a room that they've set aside. Kibbutzes do the same thing. They'll often set a room aside for hikers. I personally, just being very independent and kind of introverted, I was never really comfortable with the system of being invited into families. I always felt like I had to kind of tiptoe around. I didn't want to bother them. I didn't want them to be going out for me. Part of that's because of the English language barrier. Now, most Israelis do know English, or at least they can understand what you're saying. They may not be able to answer very well. Sometimes I felt like my brain was going to explode when I would strain to understand what people were trying to say. So when I would find myself in a family situation, you know, I would feel uncomfortable because I felt like I was forcing them to talk English when they didn't particularly know it well, and usually it'd only be like one person in the family that knew it well, and you could tell that the other 4 or 5 family members did not really know it. So, you know, it was kind of a one-sided, lopsided conversation where somebody was always being left out. So I just happen to kind of like the low-cost accommodations a little better, because you pay your money and you have a certain kind of expectation of some service, and people aren't going to be hovering over you, asking you if you you know, want to eat supper with them or you know, whatever. So, but that's you know, you'll experience that. It's all wonderful. You know, you get the taste of the up close and personal, as well as the, you know, the more impersonal accommodations of a place like this. But you'll love it. It's just an absolutely wonderful experience.
You know what I really like, and I drink it every day, sometimes 3 times a day?
Tea?
Chocolate milk.
Milk?
Chocolate milk.
I love it the most, but from where you
You know,
get
grocery
milk?
stores, convenience
so
stores.
at the south you can.
Yeah. No, it's easy to get it up here.
Yes.
So
now today I drink chocolate milk. It was wow.
Yeah.
We are just tea drink.
In fact, it's on sale now. It's like 10 shekels as opposed to 12 or 13.
Wow. Nice.
Let's do the numbers. I'm in Israel for 60 days. On average, I drink a quart in the morning and a quart at night if I'm near a store. That's $400 well spent. My body tells me chocolate milk is the perfect energy drink and recovery drink. On the 5-hour bus ride from Eilat to Tel Aviv, I get off at Yotvata to visit the kibbutz where this magical drink is made. But first, I check out the company store. To get inside the kibbutz, I need a connection.
Financially, socially, everything.
A resident who was born here kindly offers me a ride past the security gate. She speaks with reverence about her father and his fellow comrades who formed the kibbutz in 1957.
Not only they were very ambitious, they were also very motivated and very obviously smart, because the guy who thought about the idea of having a dairy here had a vision, and his vision came true. He was thinking just about the Eilat market, but now our products are sold all over Israel, and Yotvata's dairy is a very successful plan. And because of that, Yotvata is one of out of not a lot of kibbutzim that are very well, that are doing very well economically. You know, economically and socially, it goes hand in hand. And it's also one of the kibbutzim who stayed true to his beliefs in terms of the socialism.
Meaning what?
Meaning the community is still a very active community here. There is a budget that is allocated to the members of the kibbutz at the beginning of each year. So there is no salaries. You get the same if you are the CEO of the dairy or if you are working in the dining room, for example. There is no differentiation. There's no difference between people. It's all very, quality is very important. Doesn't work always, you know. The world hasn't evolved.
What do you do about lazy people that don't?
That's the problem. People now take advantage, which they didn't 50-something years ago. They were very Zionist. They were big believers in the system. Now Yotvata has over 300 members. It's a very difficult situation now. Anyway, the dairy is behind you, right there. So you see stairs that go up to.
I watched the assembly line behind glass windows. A video playing on the monitor adds a little more detail.
We are not manufacturing anymore.
Like my friendly driver, this gentleman's parents were among the original settlers of this tiny desert outpost, barely a mile from the country of Jordan.
What is your favorite product?
Mocha flavor, the one you didn't like. And my kids love chocolate agua here. So this is the history of the dairy and my own history altogether.
Yes.
My father is the most veteran worker here in the dairy. He's working here for 40 years now. He's the R&D technology. He used to develop these kind of flavors. Now he's 70 years old. He's consultant.
So he no longer works, but he.
No, he works. He works 7 hours a day.
Wow.
At the age of 70.
Wow. Well, thank him from Pennsylvania, United States, for developing a chocolate milk that's
Help you
yeah.
go through that trail.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
All the best.
And your name is,
Ronen.
how do you spell that?
R-O-N-E-N.
L
R-O-N-E-N.
L-O-N-E-N.
R as in raspberry.
Oh, R, okay.
In January, I purchased my plane ticket to Israel. The departure date is March. 5 days before I'm due to leave, I get a phone call from 95-year-old Ella Marie. This is Ella Marie back in the spring of 1947. She played matchmaker for this man and this woman. Roy and Evelyn quickly fell in love and got married a few months later. And that is how my parents came to be. Anyway, Ella Marie calls me out of the blue to say she has a really bad feeling about my upcoming trip. It spooks me so much, I move my departure date to April. And then, 24 hours before I'm supposed to leave, I play frisbee with my neighbor's dog Sophie. I hurt my back so bad I cannot even stand on my feet. I move the trip to September. Monday evening, September 9th, I fly out of Philadelphia. It's a 20-hour flight. Can you sleep sitting up? I can't. Tuesday afternoon, I'm in Israel, suffering from sleep deprivation and an 8-hour jet lag. I board the airport shuttle heading to Tel Aviv. The guidebook mentions when the buses leave for the trailhead in northern Israel. Bad decision number 1. Instead of going to a motel and resting up for a few days, I get on the bus. It's 5 p.m. I've been awake for 28 hours. At 9 p.m., I'm dropped off at Kiryat Shimona, Israel's northernmost city. I have no idea where to stay. I go to the city park, where a one-man karaoke session seems to be next door. I find some bushes and lay down amongst empty beer bottles and piles of used toilet paper. I'm so exhausted my brain is hallucinating, but I'm too wound up to sleep. At first light Wednesday morning, I call the only Israeli name I have written down, Yoash Kachtan.
This is your first time in Israel? Yeah. So
he's kind enough to pick me up. I tell Yoash I've been awake for 40 hours. He tells me Israel is in the midst of a deadly heat wave. He says I should just hang out at Kibbutz Daphne. Yoash is already late for work, so he drops me off at his house. In the evening, the family treats me to a delicious picnic in the backyard.
The next couple of days will be very extremely hot. That's what they said.
Yeah, in fact, your dad said that Sunday is what?
Bad decision number 2. Even though the heat wave is supposed to last another 4 days, I don't feel right staying at their house that long. I tell them I'm starting my hike tomorrow. Thursday morning, 100 degrees. 2 hours later, I fall and hit my head on a rock in the Sinir River. It happens mainly because I'm wearing shoes that don't fit properly. I have many foot problems. Fat pads that are getting thinner, heels that pronate, different sized feet. I try on dozens of shoes, hoping to find something that fits. When nothing does,
it'll just swing your right foot forward so you have even weight.
I hire a cobbler in Massachusetts to make a custom pair. It seems like a good idea. He makes careful note of my smaller left foot and larger right foot. The result? A strange-looking $500 shoe that's downright painful to wear. Now I'm desperate. I send a Washington State cobbler a tracing of my feet and $900. His boots feel even worse. The mass-produced Merrill ventilator is what I end up using. I decide the left foot needs a regular width shoe, while the right foot feels better with a wide shoe. Bad decision number 3. I had not tested this odd combination while wearing a heavy pack. If I had, I would have realized the wide shoe is just too sloppy for good balance. 2 days of relentless heat and dehydration end with a phone call to Yoash.
My back's getting worse.
He's disappointed to hear I'm calling it quits so soon. 6 months later, I'm back, a little bit wiser. After spending the first 3 days resting in Tel Aviv and waiting for the rain to let up, I hit the trail with regular width Merrills. That's when I run into Sahar, the person God predestined me to hike with. With Sahar, I'm forced to hike slower. I get to smell the roses. Plus, I'm able to learn how things work in Israel by watching. I'm a slow learner, but he's a patient teacher.
How do you call that?
The pit.
You take the pit out. Take the walnut. Did I say it right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kind of a sandwich. It's ready to go. Shot of energy.
Long-distance hiking is a demanding sport. It requires organization, focus, and discipline. Anything that causes loss of motivation and messes with the mind has got to go. If it's a drug like marijuana,
break the habit.
If it's a negative person back home,
cut him loose.
If it's a pack that's too heavy,
lighten up.
The name of the game is reality. Pure, unadulterated reality with no artificial ingredients. That's what we're all looking for. When we find it, we find God. Not a God, but the one and only God, the creator of the universe, found in the Old Testament book of Genesis. Later appearing in the flesh, strange as that seems, as Jesus in the New Testament. This same Jesus will come again soon to guarantee Israel's victory over her enemies. Why? Because Israel is the apple of God's eye, and because Jesus said salvation comes from the Jews. This is why I love Israel. This is why I love the Jews. I can hear the angels.
Well, I love Israel. I love you guys, the Jews, and I wanted to, when I visited Israel, I wanted to see it on foot instead of in an air-conditioned bus. So.
Oh, we're coming. Makes me feel better.
Now you're actually the second group I've run into today that's
really?
hiking the trail in sections.
אמנון, תראה איך הוא עושה סלפי. תראה איך הוא עושה סלפי, איזה חכם. מצלם אותנו. תשמור אותנו.
Now you said you're doing your group is going to camp out overnight?
Yes, but in hotel.
Okay.
But usually we're doing only on Friday.
Oh.
We're not staying overnight.
Oh, okay.
Usually. We are not doing all the road. Once in a month 2 weeks.
I see.
Every 2 weeks.
1 day. Every 2 weeks. No, not in the summer.
Camera.
Only now.
Yeah.
Camera. Oh, nice.
Yeah. We're talking.
We started 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
So how long do you figure it's going to take you at this?
We're doing it for 5 years almost.
5 years? And so you're going from the south to the north?
No, we're picking every time on the flowers.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
This isn't the first time the guidebook talks about the trail going right through an Arabic, or in this case, a Bedouin village. But it doesn't even mention the fact that there's a grocery store right along the trail.
I'm Amit, this is Ethan. I started in a lot. I joined in a rod, heading north, 21, 23.
It's been about a month and a bit.
Month and a bit for him, 2.5 weeks for me.
How did you do the desert? Did you hire
Yeah.
and laid out and dug your holes? And
No, I paid someone to do it, but you don't have to. Like, there's plenty of ways to, like, people you can get water from, or like if it's on Shabbat, there's so many people that are like traveling. And,
okay.
But like it's kind of expensive, but it's if you want the clean head. But if you don't do it, it's also like it might take a little longer. But like a lot of the places, the trail like 2 kilometers to the road, and in the road, like I heard people like hold up bottles of water, and people will like stop. Or,
right.
It's a little bit more risky.
We started at February 15th at Eilat. We did 2 stops, 1 stop for 1 day and another stop of 2 days. And then, unfortunately, we had 2 events. One was the storm, the big storm that we had to stop for 2 days. And the other was we had to celebrate this guy's 70th anniversary.
70th?
70s.
70.
17.
17.
70th. 70th anniversary. So we did another 3 days. So net, we are working today 31. Today is our 31st day. We are working between 25 to 30 days average kilometers per day.
To finish in
We are planning next
39 days.
Next Wednesday in 39 days.
So you're 70. How old are you?
67.
67. And you both have lived.
My daughter is married with very, very joy to his son.
Oh.
And we already did some trails. Together we have done the Camino de Santiago de Compostela in Spain. He is doing this trail the 3rd time already.
Oh my, oh my.
אני רוצה להקשיב להסבר על ה...
יש שם הרבה מאוד שרידים של אדם שאנחנו קוראים לו אדם קדמון, או המחקר הארכיאולוגי קורא לו על שם הכלים, על שם הכלים שהוא מייצר. פרה-היסטוריה הכוונה לפני ההיסטוריה. מה זאת אומרת לפני ההיסטוריה? ברגע, אז זה מצלמה. ברגע שמופיע כתב זה היסטוריה, וכל מה שקודם לו.
צריך לשטוף אותם?
אין בעיה.
כן?
אין בעיה. מתי אנחנו אוכלים זה לא שטוף? אולי אתה... יש מנוע?
לא, השאלה אם יש פה ריסות.
אנחנו בלחים מותרים לא שטפו. אבל אתה רוצה אין בעיה. לא רוצה. בבקשה.
תודה, זה יותר מדי.
בבקשה.
זה שסק, נכון?
כן, סחטן. סחטן. מאיפה אתם?
אני מאופקים. מכירה? רהט?
כן,
באר
כן.
שבע? והבחור כאן מאמריקה.
America?
לא.
Yeah. English?
English,
Yep.
yeah. Where are you coming from?
From Germany.
Germany.
Yes.
You're not the first German hikers that we met on the trail.
Not the first.
Just
You're
yesterday.
The third and you're the fourth man.
That's right.
From Germany.
Stefan, who works for a newspaper in Berlin,
Yeah.
and then Roman, I think was his name yesterday.
Yeah, Roman.
And so, welcome to Israel. You both from Germany?
Yeah.
Cool.
You want an interview?
How did you guys do the desert?
Yeah.
Did you bury water? Did you hire a guide?
I take from roads, from vehicles, and sometimes you meet guys on the road and you ask them. I didn't put them on the ground.
You didn't bury any water? No. How hot was it down there when you were there?
It was cold.
Was it?
Yeah.
This was back in January or February?
February.
Yeah.
Now it's you should bury it.
Yeah. What is slower than walking on beach sand? This kind of sand. I'm sure the ancient prophets stuck out like a sore thumb. That's certainly the way I feel today. Good morning. You guys Shvilistim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You came from?
Going from the north to the south.
Really? Now it's really hot.
Yeah, I know.
In the south.
What do I know though? I'm from the United States, so.
Where from?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, nice. We're going to be in the U.S. too.
Oh, really?
In 1 month from now.
Oh, beautiful. It won't even be as green as it is here, I mean,
won't be?
Spring. When I left 2.5 weeks ago, there was about a foot of snow on the ground.
Well, snow is really good.
Yeah.
It's rotten, I think.
Yeah.
Ah, so
I tape all the hikers and I do the film as I go along.
Oh, nice.
Are you hearing that there's army guys up there doing war games or training exercises?
Yeah, so we're going to see who they are.
Yeah.
We finished with them. Yeah, we just finished them.
Now, have you guys been in the army? Are you one of the folks that has been through the army and is now doing the trail?
We were in the national service.
Oh.
Like army birthday.
Okay. And what are your ages? How old are you?
20, 21.
Everybody's 20 or 21?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's been the toughest part of the trail?
נחל מדור,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Tell me what your ages are.
I'm 22. We're all about 22, 3.
Okay. And what's been your favorite food on the trail?
No, it can be our favorite. It's the thing we eat all the time.
Rice.
Rice? Oh, interesting.
Oh, I have one. Someone gave us M&M in the road, so that was, I think, my favorite.
Okay. Now, how about how much camping have you been doing versus the Trail Angels system?
We did the road in 2 parts. At first, we were with a big group, so we did all the time camping for 3 weeks in the desert. And since we're alone, we are every night almost with the angels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's the as far as the gear you're carrying? What's probably the least important thing that you're carrying? Or the thing that you ended up sending home or giving away or throwing away or?
I think we only take important things. We don't take tent, which we used to take with the group. A lot of our medicines, but it's good.
Yeah.
That we don't.
Yeah.
That's it, I think.
How about changes of clothes? How many?
I use these clothes all the week, and I have another set of clean clothes for the weekend.
Why the difference between week and weekend?
Because in Shabbat we do stops.
Oh, okay.
I'm religious, so we usually do it in all kinds of settlements, yeshuvim.
Very nice, very nice.
And it feels better to be clean. And
when did you guys start?
Before 5 weeks, month and a week, from Eilat.
And have you been in the Army or the National Service?
We did national service. We finished 2 years at August. She did with the kids that they are retired. I think that this is the word. And I did with the children, teenagers at risk. And this is it. And now we're doing the Shvil. And we are so slow compared to you. Wow.
What has been the toughest part so far?
מה היה החלק הכי קשה? I think, yes, Barak Vardit. This is near, it's after Chomet Shizafon. Because this was day with lots of heavy things at our back, and we have lots of paint ptayim, and we go 30 kilometers a day.
Wow.
But after this, everything amazing.
I've gotten to the point where if I see the word Nahal in the guidebook, my heart sinks because it means I'm going up a boulder-filled stream bed lined with thorn bushes on both sides.
This is my two children.
Oh.
Shachaf and Emily.
Oh my goodness. Have you both been in the Army already?
Yeah. Yes. In Eilat we started accounts. We took accounts about 6 liters for a person for a day, and then after 2 days we reduced it to 5, and still at the end of the day there was left water, so we reduced it to 4, and 4 in the desert was okay. was okay. We only one day in the desert we drank all the water. At the end of the day, no water. So once Shachaf went to bring us water from Be'er Ora, and once his friend brought us water.
Yeah.
And we took water for 2 days all the time.
Yeah, for 2 days.
Yes. And food also for food we took for a long time, of 4 or 5 days.
So your pack was very heavy.
Yes, yes. Shachaf was going about 20 kilos on his back. Emily about 15, and I also about 15 kilo on the back.
Wow.
But we're going slowly, you know, we're not in a hurry for nowhere. So if we didn't finish the trek for the day, so we make it next day. No hurry.
Tell me how you dealt with the water in the desert.
Well, basically we just carried water for about 2 days and a half, which is about 10 liters of water each. And we had a lot of luck. We just met people who just gave us water and whatever we needed, and we managed without putting, like, how do you say it? Like arranging it.
Caches.
Yeah. So
Or
just luck and carrying a lot of liters.
Very cool. And you guys have all been in the Army?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're used to carrying a lot of weight on your back.
I'm not.
More or less, yeah.
I'm not.
Your packs look very big.
Yeah, it's really
about
big.
85 liters.
85 liters of capacity.
Yeah.
Wow. How many kilos do you think that you're carrying?
Now it's
16.
Yeah, 15, 16.
Yeah.
This trail makes me really alive. I feel so complete here in this land. This is my home, actually. And every step I feel good. I feel God. I feel my Bible. All the history, I mean, just here.
Mm-hmm. It's very quiet out here. Very quiet. It's 8:30 in the morning. My feet are actually getting wet walking through the grass. Let me show you something I can do with the external frame pack that internal frames won't do. I can hook up the hip belt, cinch it up tight, loosen up the shoulder straps, and it causes the pack to actually fall away from my back, and that air gets in between my wet back and cools me off. I'm going to give you a very simple example of how looking for these trailblazers can be mentally draining. I'm coming to, okay, it looks like we go straight, but you look off in the distance over there. I can't see anything straight ahead. I can't see anything to my left. So you look back, okay, you see a blaze there, so that assumes that there's something straight ahead. So off we go, trial and error, hoping, wondering, am I burning up calories for nothing here? Who knows? Is anybody? Okay, I see way off in the distance on a tree. But you know, for 15, 30 seconds, often you're anxious, where's the trail? You've just come out of the desert. Tell me how you handled the water situation.
We got phone numbers of people who can bring us water to the night camps,
but we walked 1 month and didn't need it eventually. Always we find water in the night camps. Or in some places we have to walk about 2 or 3 kilometers to the near water source.
So what does that, when you say you're looking for water, I mean, what does that mean? You're just looking for bottles on the ground that people have thrown?
Yes,
or
there is a lot of, in the night camps there is a lot of people who dig water and they plant more than they need. So when you get there, you see a note with the here is water for Shvil Israel. You can take. So we took the reserves, and in some places we found people that we slept near people that have enough water for both.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave us.
Now,
Sorry for the English.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. If you could just tell me what your job is and how you got it.
I am a shepherd and I don't know how I got it, but I'm doing it.
And so what do you do all day long?
I watch the sheep and take care of them in the house, take care about the horses.
Now, is this something that your father did and your grandfather? Or?
No, my father is sofer stam. You know what is sofer stam? It's the tefillin.
Oh, religious.
Yeah, religious.
Yeah.
And my grandfather have a museum, modern art museum.
Okay.
In Germany.
Oh.
And I am a shepherd.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
What?
Sometimes.
What do you do in your mind all day long? What do you think about?
Traveling.
Where would you like to travel to?
Everywhere.
And when do you think you'll be able to do it?
When I'm ready.
Very good. What's your name?
Shalom.
Shalom?
Yeah.
And how old are you?
22.
22. They've got a room for hikers.
Maybe us go there and figure it out. Maybe they know, because we're not from here. We're only for a month.
Yeah. Okay.
Try the.
Okay.
Try there, right?
Thank you. Hi. I'm trying to figure out where what they call the forester's house is, where they have 4 beds for hikers and a shower and restroom.
I think here.
Right up over there?
Yeah.
Okay. And you just walk in through the gate?
Yeah, it's a guest house for the traveler for the Israel National Trail.
Oh, okay. All right. They didn't describe it as a army base, but is that what it is?
No, it's not the army base there.
Oh, okay. There are so many flies around that for supper I have to keep moving. I don't know what's worse. Inside the tent it feels like a sauna. Outside I have to contend with biting flies.
hard. Yesterday was probably the hardest, one of the hardest days on the trail.
Go down and after this, take out one. Lagos, קפה? חושב אימן.
Thank you very much.
No problem. דרור, אתה גם רוצה קפה? לא איתנו כבר, אה? רגע, מנדי? תלכו.
לא, אני כבר אחרי 1:30, אני רואה שזה לא עוזר.
טוב, סבבה.